There was a time when I had no idea of the concept of recovery. I of course, like many people, was told by the persons from whom I was receiving treatment that I would probably be on these medications for the rest of my life. I should probably never drive an automobile. And this was something I was just going to have to live with. In the last 6 years, I have been managing the symptoms of my diagnosis without medication. It's not easy. Some days, like I hate to quote Andrew Lloyd Webber, but a line from Evita, some days are hard, some are a little bit harder. But I do manage to live with my diagnosis of bipolar disorder without the benefit of pharmaceuticals. Is not something I would necessarily recommend to everyone. It's something I had to learn to do out of necessity when at one point in my life I didn't have insurance or any means of obtaining my medication. And as for the concept of recovery, I really didn't know anything about it until I went to the CPS training last September, in September of 2006. It was a total eye-opening thing to me, but I did discover that a lot of the things I learned in that training about recovery were things that I was already had already accepted in my life and things that I had already put into action. I had for years wandered about in a very, as a person who was very dependent on other people, to feel validated, to feel safe, to be provided for, and in the last several years that became no longer the case, and I gradually began to establish more self-reliance through necessity and just through a series of events. It's amazing how tough and how strong you can discover you are when the situation demands that you examine yourself and find these strengths and allow these strengths to carry you. It's an enormous part of my life now. It was somewhat before I attended the CPS training last year, because there were several certified peer specialists at the CSB where I was a receptionist who knew that I was a person living with a diagnosis and who actively engaged me, and provided peer support to me. There was one in particular that was not only a CPS but also an LPN, whose office was directly across from where I sat, and I knew that I could always go tap on his door, and if he wasn't seeing somebody at that moment, that was a good place to go. And of course, since becoming a CPS, and even more so since I was honored and fortunate enough to become the project director for the CPS project, peer support is like an integral part of my daily functioning. There are people that I speak with on a daily basis. There are people that I went through the CPS training with last year that I speak with at least once a week, just to touch base, just to tune in, just to see how things are going for them, just to kind of give a dialogue of balance and an exchange of, well, I'm here. And then, of course, I think I have driven my predecessor in the position, Beth Filson, a little to distraction by the amount of peer support I have called on her in the last 3 months since I've started in this position, just for insight and guidance. But I am discovering that a lot of it happens for me instinctively. When I was working, I worked for a while on an assertive community treatment, or an ACT team, and it amazed me the number of times I'd be working with a consumer and would find that unconsciously and without thought I would be doing the things that I had learned in the CPS training. it sounds a little like bragging, but it almost somewhat seems like second nature to me.